Long before Meghan Markle entered Prince Harry's life, there was another woman many royal watchers believed would eventually become his wife, Chelsy Davy. Their relationship lasted for years, survived intense media attention, and appeared stronger than many people realized. But now, according to royal commentators, renewed discussions about Chelsy have sparked uncomfortable questions about Harry's life, his marriage, and the choices that changed everything. Social media erupted as old interviews, photographs, and stories from Harry's past resurfaced online. Critics claim the comparisons between Harry's former relationship and his current life have become impossible to ignore. Supporters insist the internet is unfairly romanticizing the past while ignoring reality. Yet one question continues dominating royal discussions: does Harry ever look back and wonder what might have happened if things had turned out differently? As commentators revisit one of the most famous royal relationships that never led to marriage, a surprising debate is suddenly capturing global attention. Long before Meghan Markle became part of Prince Harry's story, there was one name that royal watchers believed would eventually become synonymous with his future: Chelsy Davy. For years, Harry and Chelsy were considered one of the most recognizable young couples in Britain. They laughed together, traveled together, attended royal events together, and according to many observers at the time, they appeared genuinely happy. That is why renewed discussion surrounding Chelsy continues generating so much attention even today. The internet exploded. Old photographs resurfaced. Past interviews began circulating again. Royal commentators revisited stories from Harry's younger years. And suddenly, social media was flooded with one question: what if Harry had married Chelsy instead? Supporters immediately pushed back. According to fans, these comparisons are unfair. Life does not work through alternate timelines. People grow. Relationships end. And the choices people make ultimately shape who they become. That argument resonated with many viewers. But critics argued the fascination remains understandable. According to those commentators, Chelsy represented a completely different chapter of Harry's life. A chapter before royal exits. Before documentaries. Before family feuds. Before public controversy dominated headlines. That observation quickly became the center of the discussion. Soon, social media users began revisiting Harry's own comments about his younger years. Many noted how frequently he appeared relaxed and carefree during that period. Whether fair or unfair, those comparisons gained enormous traction online. Soon, YouTube creators began posting videos with titles like "The One That Got Away," "Harry's Lost Love," "What If Harry Married Chelsy?" "The Relationship That Changed Everything." Millions watched. Because people were not simply discussing Chelsy. They were discussing choices. Life-changing choices. The kind of decisions that permanently alter the course of someone's future. Some royal commentators even suggested that public fascination with Chelsy has less to do with romance and more to do with timing. According to those observers, Chelsy represents a version of Harry that many people barely recognize today. A younger Harry. A happier Harry. A Harry largely untouched by the controversies that would later define his public image. Supporters reject that narrative. According to fans, people are romanticizing the past and ignoring the complexities of real relationships. They argue that nobody knows what would have happened if Harry and Chelsy had stayed together. And they are right. Nobody knows. But according to critics, that uncertainty is exactly what fuels public fascination. Because every time Harry's current life becomes the subject of debate, people inevitably start wondering about the roads not taken. And according to royal watchers, that curiosity was only beginning to spark an even bigger conversation. As old photos and stories about Chelsy Davy continued spreading online, royal commentators noticed something interesting. The discussion was no longer really about Chelsy. It was about Harry. More specifically, it was about the difference between the Harry people remember and the Harry they see today. That observation quickly exploded across social media. Supporters of Harry argued the comparison is deeply unfair. According to fans, people naturally change over time. Life experiences change people. Marriage changes people. Fatherhood changes people. And the intense public scrutiny Harry has faced over the past decade would affect almost anyone. That perspective resonated with many viewers. But critics argued that the contrast remains impossible to ignore. According to those commentators, when people look at old images of Harry and Chelsy, they often see a prince who appeared relaxed, spontaneous, and comfortable in his own skin. Whether that perception is accurate or not, it quickly became the center of the debate. Soon, social media users began posting side-by-side comparisons. Old photographs, old interviews, old public appearances. The internet became obsessed with nostalgia. And nostalgia is powerful. Because nostalgia rarely focuses on reality. It focuses on possibility. The possibility of what might have been. That reality fueled enormous engagement. Soon, YouTube creators began posting videos with titles such as "The Harry We Used to Know," "Chelsy vs. Meghan," "Did Harry Choose the Wrong Path?" "The Life He Left Behind." Millions watched. Because beneath the royal drama sat a much larger question. A question about happiness. Some commentators even suggested that public fascination with Chelsy has little to do with Chelsy herself. Instead, they argue she represents a symbol. A symbol of Harry's former life. A life before royal exits. Before lawsuits. Before family feuds. Before years of controversy-dominated headlines. Supporters immediately pushed back. According to fans, this narrative unfairly assumes Harry is unhappy today. They argue nobody truly knows what happens inside a marriage except the people living it. And that argument gained significant support. But critics maintained that perception often becomes reality in the public eye. And according to those commentators, the perception of Harry has changed dramatically over the years. That observation spread rapidly online. Soon, social media users started asking uncomfortable questions. Does Harry ever miss his old life? Does he ever think about the paths he didn't take? Does he ever wonder what would have happened if Chelsy had remained in the picture? And most importantly, does he view his current life as worth everything he sacrificed to achieve it? Nobody knows the answers. And according to many royal watchers, that uncertainty is exactly why the discussion continues generating so much attention. Because every time people revisit Harry's past, they are really comparing two versions of the same man. The prince he once was. And the man he became. And according to critics, that comparison is leading toward the most explosive question of all. If Harry could go back and relive the last 15 years, would he make the exact same choices again? Or would he choose a completely different future? As the debate surrounding Chelsy Davy continued spreading online, royal commentators started focusing on what they believed was the real reason the story keeps returning. It was not about romance. It was not about nostalgia. And according to some royal watchers, it was not even about Chelsy herself. It was about regret. That possibility immediately ignited discussion. Because whenever people revisit Harry's relationship with Chelsy, they are often asking a much bigger question. Did Harry leave behind a life that would have made him happier? Supporters of Harry immediately rejected that narrative. According to fans, the idea is based entirely on speculation. Nobody knows what would have happened if Harry and Chelsy had married. Nobody knows whether they would have stayed together. And nobody knows whether they would have faced challenges of their own. That argument resonated with many viewers. But critics argued public fascination continues because Chelsy represents something unique. According to those commentators, she represents the last serious relationship Harry had before his life changed completely. Before marriage. Before California. Before royal departures. Before years of public conflict. That observation quickly became the center of the discussion. Soon, social media users began revisiting stories from the past. Many pointed to reports that Chelsy struggled with the intense pressure that came with dating a prince. Others noted that she reportedly valued privacy and independence. Those details fueled endless debate. Because according to some commentators, they highlight a fundamental question. Could anyone have truly prepared for the life Harry eventually chose? The internet became obsessed. Soon, YouTube creators began posting titles such as, "Did Harry ignore the warning signs? The life Chelsy didn't want. A completely different future. The question Harry can't escape." Millions watched. Because beneath the speculation sat a fascinating reality. Every major life decision closes certain doors forever. And according to critics, Harry's decision to move forward with a different path permanently changed everything. Supporters argue that is simply life. Everyone makes choices. Everyone leaves possibilities behind. And judging those choices years later serves little purpose. That perspective gained support. But critics maintained that public curiosity remains powerful because Harry's life has become so public. Every challenge, every controversy, every headline, all of it invites comparisons. And comparisons naturally lead people back to Chelsy. Some royal commentators even suggested that the fascination is less about whether Harry regrets anything and more about whether the public regrets what happened. Because many people still remember a version of Harry that seemed carefree, popular, and largely untouched by the conflicts that now dominate royal headlines. Whether that memory is accurate or idealized remains heavily debated. But according to royal watchers, it explains why the conversation refuses to disappear. Because every time Harry faces a new controversy, the same question returns. Not whether Chelsy was the right person. Not whether Meghan is the wrong person. But whether Harry's life today resembles the future he once imagined for himself. And according to commentators, that question is leading toward an even bigger debate about happiness, identity, and the true cost of the choices that changed Harry's life forever. As the debate surrounding Chelsy Davy continued growing, royal commentators began focusing on a possibility that many viewers found even more fascinating than the relationship itself. What if the public is asking the wrong question? What if the real issue isn't whether Harry misses Chelsy? What if the real issue is whether Harry misses the life he had when Chelsy was part of it? That theory exploded across social media. Because according to critics, whenever people talk about Chelsy, they rarely focus solely on the relationship. Instead, they focus on the period of Harry's life that relationship represents. A period many people remember as simpler, less complicated, less controversial, and far less divided than the royal landscape we see today. Supporters of Harry immediately pushed back. According to fans, this narrative ignores reality. Harry has repeatedly stated that he loves his wife and children, and has chosen the life he currently lives. According to supporters, outsiders have no way of knowing what truly makes him happy. That argument gained significant support. But critics argued public perception tells a different story. According to those commentators, people often compare Harry's current situation with old photographs and memories from his younger years. And those comparisons continue fueling endless speculation. Soon, social media users started asking questions like, does Harry miss being a working royal? Does he miss Britain? Does he miss the close relationship he once had with William? Does he miss the version of himself that existed before years of public conflict? Those questions generated enormous engagement. Because they touch on something universal. The idea of looking back. The idea of wondering about roads not taken. The idea of imagining an alternative future. Some royal commentators even suggested that Chelsy has become a symbol of that alternative future. Not because people believe she was perfect. Not because people believe life would have been easy. But because she represents a completely different timeline. A timeline where many of the events that define Harry's life today may never have happened. Whether fair or unfair, that perception spread rapidly. Soon, YouTube creators began posting titles such as "The Life Harry Never Lived," "The Alternative Future," "What If Everything Had Been Different?" "The Question That Won't Go Away." Millions watched. Because people realized this discussion was no longer about one relationship. It was about choices. Life-changing choices. The kind of choices that shape an entire future. Supporters argue Harry has already answered the question through his actions. He chose Meghan. He chose marriage. He chose a different path. And according to fans, that should be the end of the story. But critics maintain that public fascination remains because human nature is curious. People naturally wonder about alternate outcomes. Especially when someone's life becomes as public as Harry's. And according to many royal watchers, that curiosity is leading toward the biggest question yet. If Harry believes he made the right choices, why do so many people remain obsessed with the life he left behind? And what does that reveal about how the public views his journey today? As the discussion surrounding Chelsy Davy continued spreading across social media, royal commentators began focusing on what many believe is the biggest question of all. Not whether Harry misses Chelsy. Not whether Chelsy misses Harry. And not whether things could have worked out differently. But whether Harry is truly happy with the life he has today. According to critics, that is the question hiding beneath every headline. Because whenever people revisit Harry's past, they are really trying to understand his present. The internet quickly became divided. Supporters of Harry argued the answer is obvious. He has repeatedly spoken about building a life centered around his wife and children. He chose his path. He chose his future. And according to fans, that should settle the debate. That perspective gained significant support. But critics maintained that public fascination continues because Harry's story is unlike almost any other. He walked away from a life that millions of people could never imagine having. Royal status. Palace life. Global recognition. A place within one of the most famous institutions on earth. And according to those commentators, people naturally wonder whether anyone can leave something that extraordinary without occasionally looking back. That observation quickly became the center of the discussion. Soon, social media users began asking, does Harry ever miss his old life? Does he miss his former relationships? Does he miss the closeness he once shared with William? Does he miss Britain? And does he ever wonder how things might have turned out differently? Those questions generated enormous engagement. Because they touch on something universal. The idea of choice. The idea of sacrifice. The idea that every major decision creates a future, while simultaneously erasing another one. Some royal commentators even suggested that Chelsy Davy has become less of a person in the public imagination, and more of a symbol. A symbol of the road not taken. A symbol of an alternative future. A symbol of a version of Harry's life that people will always speculate about. Whether fair or unfair, that perception spread rapidly. Soon, YouTube creators began posting titles like "The Life Harry Left Behind," "The Road Not Taken," "What If Everything Had Been Different?" "The Question Harry Can Never Escape." Millions watched. Because people realized something important. This story is no longer really about Chelsy. It is not even really about Meghan. It is about Harry, his choices, his journey, and how history will ultimately judge the path he chose. Supporters argue history should judge Harry based on what he has built, not what he left behind. Critics argue the comparisons will never stop because the contrast between his past and present remains so dramatic. And according to many royal watchers, both sides may be right. Because regardless of how anyone feels about Harry, one reality remains impossible to ignore. The public will always be fascinated by the life he could have lived. Not because anyone knows it would have been better. Not because anyone knows it would have been worse. But because it will forever remain unknowable. And according to commentators, that uncertainty is exactly why the conversation keeps returning. Because while Harry's future is still being written, the question of what might have been may follow him for the rest of his life. So what do you think after this fascinating royal debate? Do you believe people are unfairly romanticizing Harry's relationship with Chelsy Davy? Or do you think the public remains fascinated because she represents a completely different future that Harry never got to experience? Do you think Harry ever looks back and wonders about the roads not taken? Or do you believe he is exactly where he wants to be today? Some viewers believe Harry made the right choice and built the life he always wanted. Others believe the constant comparisons reveal how dramatically his life has changed since those earlier years. But one thing is certain, this story is no longer just about Chelsy Davy. It's about choices. It's about destiny. And it's about how one decision can change the course of an entire life. Drop your opinion in the comments below. Do you think Harry would make the exact same choices again if he could go back in time? Or do you think there are moments from his past he wishes he could relive differently? And if you thought this debate was surprising, wait until you hear what some royal commentators are now saying about Harry's future, his relationship with the royal family, and why they believe the next few years could determine how his entire legacy is remembered.